Hello there, Mad Mike here, and welcome back to the channel. And today we are going to be doing another episode of Movie Spotlight. And today we are going to be looking at a classic horror film from 1976 that unfortunately does not get as much recognition as it really deserves, and that is Alice, Sweet Alice. And a lot of people, unless you're really into horror, a lot of people probably don't know about this movie. It was, I believe, the first movie ever for Brooke Shields. She was very young in this. I think she was probably like 5 or 6, maybe a little bit older, maybe 7 or 8 in this film. And she's really not in it for that much, and pretty much everybody else is kind of almost a throwaway actor or actress. And it's a very strange film in the sense that it's shot in a very weird way. The music is very unsettling. There's a lot of visual stuff in the film that is very disturbing in a lot of ways, and the subject matter itself is disturbing because a lot of this movie has to do with the deaths of children. And the idea of a child killing people, and it's very, very strange. It also has a lot of stuff entwined with religion, specifically Catholicism, and I'm just gonna say this is that this movie really it makes you, if you're a horror fan, especially if you're a fan of Italian horror, you'll probably love this movie. But the average person that watches this is going to be very uncomfortable with the way that this movie kind of operates, in the sense that you might not necessarily know what's going on all the time, but that's on purpose. And really, the idea of this film is that a young girl is murdered on the day of her communion. Nobody really knows who did it, but there's a lot of suspicion that it was her jealous older sister. And the sister might have, mental problems or something like that. They allude to a lot of these things. And then basically the rest of the movie is about the family kind of dealing with this idea that the older sister might be a murderer. The parents kind of coming to terms with this. The parents are divorced. The father has remarried, but he's still around to kind of now that one of the daughters is dead. And there's a lot going on with this in terms of just the family dynamics and stuff and building of the characters. The relatives are all horrible people. They live in this apartment building that's full of tenants that are all kind of skeezy weirdos. And everybody kind of dislikes the older daughter. Like, a lot of people, they scream at her, you're a spoiled brat and all this other types of stuff. And the younger sister is kind of the favorite. She's the good one, the one that's played by Brooke Shields. And it delves into an extreme perception for anybody that has siblings, of the idea of favoritism among siblings and how it can go horribly wrong. And there's a lot of strange visuals in this. Again, it reminds me a little bit of Don't Look Now, which if any of you have seen that, that's another really good kind of Italian horror style, like dream-like film, where the murderer in this is running around in a yellow, like a banana yellow raincoat, with this like weird kind of mask on. It's painted with like mascara and lipstick. It's very interesting, just the visual representations in this. And again, that's really the meat of what you see in a lot of Italian horror, even though this isn't Italian horror as far as I know anyway. It is the visual representations. You don't really, as far as it really goes. I mean, the story itself is very basic, even though it does keep you in the shadows for the most of it. But a lot of it is told through visual means, and just kind of the story beats and stuff like that. It does work. It works very well, and the death scenes are extremely gratuitous in this. I wouldn't say there's an extreme amount of gore, but again, there's a lot of things. People get stabbed repeatedly and stabbed and stabbed and stabbed. And it gets to the point where it's almost where it is kind of, the stabbing itself is gratuitous, even though the gore may not be. But it just, again, it's kind of one of those movies that tackles a subject matter that even at the time was very taboo, with the idea of the death of children or children killing people. That's been revisited in a few other things. You had stuff like back then too, like The Omen and things like that. But that was more supernatural. Damien wasn't running around with a butcher knife, actually stabbing people. In this, it feels a lot more realistic in the sense like this feels real. This feels like this person is actually running around and doing this stuff. It's not anything out of the ordinary. It's not anything insane like a Michael Myers or a Jason Voorhees where they're hacking people's heads off and stuff. It's like this is like, all right, if somebody with enough strength came after you and you weren't ready for it, somebody stabs you with a butcher knife, what happens? And that's really what this movie feels like. Is it feels like they're preying on your idea that you don't know what's going on, and it scares you through confusion, which is really what, again, it follows along very similar lines to Italian horror, a good Italian horror in some ways, where you don't necessarily know what's happening, or it makes you think that you're so sure you know what's happening that when it takes the left turn and it says, oh no, it's not this at all, that you're just completely thrown off by it. Because a lot of the times there is a lot of like, the idea of like the red herring. There's a lot of stuff in this movie that like, you're watching it and you think like, oh, it has to be this person or it has to be that person. And then you don't realize it, or that person gets attacked and you're like, okay, so what's going on now? I don't know what's happening. But it all does wrap up by the end and you understand what's going on. But it's all kind of built, and when I said before, it's kind of built around Catholicism because a lot of the murders happen around this, local church. It's kind of a small knit community in the city, or in the kind of like city suburb area, and definitely it works with that, especially because they live in this very tall apartment building with a bunch of neighbors and stuff like that, and it preys on that sense of just confusion and disorientation, and the idea that they do jump scares in this too, but it's not outrageous in terms of the it's not like a one every 10 seconds like a horror movie today would do. It's very sparing, but when they actually do it, it is fucking scary because you just jump out of your seat because you're not expecting that. You're like, oh, you're walking through someplace, whatever, and then but they won't do it again for another like 30 or 40 minutes, and then something else happens. And again, it kind of has the idea where the killer does wear a mask, that mascara mask, that really does work with the idea of the anonymity, like it, and the mask is shaped again, it's shaped in a smile, kind of like the clown mask that Michael Myers was wearing in Halloween, that kind of an idea. Even though I believe this movie predates Halloween because this was made in 1976 and Halloween was in 1978. So the idea that this smiling character, it's almost like being attacked by a doll, especially because the person is of such short stature, because the killer is supposed to be made out to be the older sister, but she's even though Brooke Shields is like 7 or 8, the older sister is maybe 10 or 11, so she still stands at about 3.5, 4 feet tall at most. So it again it creeps you out in the way of the visuals, and there's a lot of bright colors in this too. It's not like a dark horror film where you can't see anything. You can see everything in this movie when it happens. It's not they don't keep shit in the shadows on this. Like when somebody comes out, they come out and it's in full view, full lighting. There's not like a scary monster that hides in the shadows and stuff like that, or like a scene like Michael Myers coming out of a shadow in the closet or something. It's all in hard lighting, which makes it even stranger, and it feels very dreamlike when you're watching it. It's almost like watching a nightmare. It's kind of fucking creepy. But I couldn't recommend this movie higher for people that are horror fans, especially people that are fans of Italian horror. I know I keep appealing to those people with this series, but a lot of Italian horror movies, or movies that are like Italian horror, are very obscure, and I do like spotlighting them. So, again, if you like that genre, you'll probably like Alice, Sweet Alice. If you're a horror fan, I'd at least urge you to give it a watch. If you don't like horror, probably don't check it out, or if you don't like gore and stuff like that, don't check it out. Or a lot of blood and stuff, or the subject matter for that. So, that's just my breakdown of that. I really do love this movie. I really enjoy it. It took me a long time to get it on DVD for my collection, but I really do love it. I'd recommend it to anybody who's a fan of horror. At least give it one watch and see if you like it. But that's just me. But thank you again for listening. Hit the bell for notifications, hit the like button, subscribe, and remember, I live my life free of compromise. Do you?